Good evening. A few technical difficulties tonight. We have a few questions have come in, so I'll endeavour to answer them. The first is, Dear Luang Por, thank you for your teachings. One of the three fetters abandoned by the first fruition is Sakkaya Ditthi. Is my understanding correct to say that in order to abandon this fetter, one has to obtain at least Upacara Samadhi and develop insight to ultimately realize and experience that one's body is subject to anicca, dukkha, anatta? Well, that probably is a slight simplification. According to the Buddha, one of the qualities of the stream enterer who's abandoned Sakkaya Ditthi is that they have unshakable faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So that includes unshakable faith in the path of practice, the Noble Eightfold Path, and its effectiveness for purifying the mind or bringing the mind to clear knowledge and vision of the way things are, removing the ignorance that underlies all our suffering and indeed the process of becoming and birth. Another quality of the stream enterer, they have sila is established, so clear understanding of wholesome, the difference between wholesome and unwholesome karma, and they practice accordingly, so they are constantly abandoning unwholesome mental states and intentions and cultivating the wholesome aspects of the path. So that includes established in the 5 precepts. Those intentions drop away, the intention to break, not follow the 5 precepts, drop away from their mind. They also are not stingy. They have the quality of non-greed well developed, not stingy, not possessive. And their whole life is dedicated to the realization of Nibbana, the end of suffering, the uprooting of ignorance, craving, attachment, mental defilements. So they're no longer pursuing the worldly dhammas as their goal. So one of the factors that will support that is obviously a mind that has been developing right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi. So they know how to go beyond the hindrances. They regularly are experiencing states of samadhi beyond the hindrances. So Upacara Samadhi is called access concentration. It's neighbourhood or pre-jhana concentration where the hindrances drop away, but the mind is not completely absorbed in its object. So Upacara Samadhi, you can still hear, can still see, so you might have visions arise or sounds arise even in your mind as nimittas in meditation. You can still feel painful and pleasant and painful experiences with your body. You can still think, but it's all within the boundaries of samadhi. As Luang Por Chah used to say, it's like the chicken in its cage or its coop. It can walk around, but it has boundaries. It doesn't go outside the boundaries of its cage or its coop. Your mind doesn't wander out into unwholesome objects while experiencing Upacara Samadhi. And through training, that can lead into Appana Samadhi, different levels of jhana. So yes, it's the state of mind the well-trained mind, Upacara Samadhi, that can contemplate or reflect, wisely reflect on experience, and, as you say, can observe the impermanent nature of sense contacts and sense data that we absorb, so forms and or sights, sounds, taste, smell, touch, feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, arising, passing away, can be seen as impermanent. Mental states, mental creations of the mind, sankharas, arising, passing away, can be seen as impermanent, can be known as impermanent, because the mind is free from the hindrances. It's in a state of clarity and stillness and peace, at least to a certain extent. So then one can contemplate, free the mind from delusions of permanence. Excuse me, are we still live? Okay. Technical problems, impermanence of technology. So, Upacara Samadhi is certainly vital. The attainment of that, the experience of that, is vital for being able to contemplate these three characteristics that apply to physical and mental phenomena. And by seeing impermanence, one also is taken to see, or comes to see and know not self. Because what is impermanent, you can't really take as a solid, permanently existing self, because it's impermanent. So when you know the body as impermanent, arising due to different causes and conditions, changing, passing away, and feelings and thoughts and memories and sense consciousness as a rising, passing away, you also have an opportunity to see not self. So the seeing and the knowing of anicca, dukkha, anatta changes your view of things from taking everything as me, mine, myself, to seeing things as not self. And there's this sense of separation, clear separation between the mind that knows, is well trained with insight, wisdom, and what is known, the body, the feelings, the memories, the perceptions, the five khandhas. So this is why we meditate, to develop and improve our level of mindfulness, in order to go beyond the hindrances, in order to develop clear knowledge and vision of the way things are. So just keep going. I mean, one thing is, Ajahn Chah used to say, well, when people had doubts, what level of samadhi, what depth of samadhi do I need to attain Maggaphala Nibbana? Well, just know, he would say, just know whether your mind is peaceful or not, and how long it's peaceful. Just for a few moments, or for many minutes, or for half an hour or an hour. What kind of hindrances are arising, and so on. Maybe that reflection is more practical, more useful. You've read the books, about depths of samadhi, levels of samadhi, kanika, upajara, appana, or levels of jhana, and so on. But they can become an attachment, a distraction, because you sit there thinking, what level of samadhi is this perhaps? And that's a doubt, and that's another distraction. So maybe come from that place of observing the mind, whether it's peaceful or not. Next question. Ajahn, I have a question. From the Niraya Sutta it says, a lay follower with 5 qualities is cast down to hell. What 5? They kill living creatures, steal, commit sexual misconduct, lie, and use alcoholic drinks that cause negligence. However, during my whole 46 years of life, especially when I was much younger, I broke some precepts, such as lying or stealing, some coins from my mother, etc. And I see my colleagues drink beer every week. Does this mean that as long as people who have broken the precepts, will they go to hell? Or we can be like Angulimala, that once we decide we want to do that again, then we can be safe from going to hell. Not, I assume you mean once we decide we don't want to do that again, then we can be safe from going to hell. Well, a sutta is a sutta given one place to one person in time, and it has to be taken with that in mind. I think, as you've said, you practice being alive for 46 years. Over time, things change in our life and in the activities, the actions, the karma that we make, the way our mind is. So we hopefully learn many lessons through our life. So that's one lesson we learn, is that we learn to see the painful consequences of unskillful behavior through body, speech, and mind. And when you see that, you become aware of the painful consequences, the suffering that arises from, say, killing, or then you may undertake to no longer kill, whether it's animals or people. So this is the development of the path factors. As we practice, the more effort we put into listening to Dhamma, reflecting on Dhamma, putting it into practice in daily life, well, changes occur, hopefully. You drop some bad habits, you improve, but there'll be moments when we're careless or heedless, not mindful. And we may slip back into an old way of behavior, and so we unmindfully kill something bothering us, or we may be tempted to steal, and so on. One can slip until, as I was saying in the earlier question, one is established as a Arya Pugala, a noble one. Until the mind is developed to that level, then there's always a chance you can slip back into unskillful, unwholesome ways of behavior. So we're constantly uplifting ourselves, listening to the Dhamma, and then reflecting on our actions so that we can improve to the point where those intentions to break the precepts no longer arise. So the Arya Pugala, the noble one, has cut off the pathway to a rebirth in the hell realm, they say. So they have no more extreme suffering, because what is hell realms? It's the extreme suffering and the causes and conditions that lead up to that experience of extreme suffering, of anguish, regret, fear. That's been cut off by establishing a clear knowledge of what is wholesome karma, unwholesome karma, establishing the practice of the precepts, and so on. The noble one has cut off the pathway to rebirth in the hell realms. So until these factors of the path are well established, there's always a chance you can slip back. But I think, like you say, most people have broken the precepts at least occasionally in their life. Often it is earlier on in their life. And so as we grow, hopefully we close up those avenues for the unskillful behavior that leads us to break the precepts and change for the better. That's our aim. But if you're not making extreme unskillful karma regularly, you're going in the right direction then. If you're killing less, stealing less sexual misconduct, less lying, less drinking and taking drugs. If you're basically doing that less and less through your life, then you're going in the right direction. And that's all you can do, isn't it? How fast you close off the pathways to the hell realms. It depends how much effort you put into the practice, and associating with wise people, wise teachers, good examples who can guide you, and then reflecting for yourself and making that determination to change your behavior for the better. And the whole premise of the Buddhist teachings is that you can change. But you have to make that effort, and you have to see the harm that has come through, say, previous times when you have broken the precepts. You feel sad, regret about what you've done, and then you don't want to experience that again, so you stop, you change your behavior. But you probably don't need to speculate too much about, hell realms, heaven realms, or whatever. Just keep working from day to day on what's coming up in your mind. Are you acting out of greed and selfishness? Are you harming others? Are you acting out of anguish, aggression? Or are you making effort to abandon those qualities, to restrain your behavior, cultivate mindfulness, wisdom, and change for the better? Perhaps that's the useful way to deal with this problem. And you can endlessly doubt, and what does doubt do to the mind? It spins the mind out, because doubt is doubt. You don't know the answer, so you don't know what will happen when you die. Is there rebirth? Where will you be reborn? Will you be born in a good place, in a bad place? You don't know, because you haven't died yet. But you can know your mind in the present moment, today. Am I falling into hell today by holding on to mental states of extreme anguish, depression, rage, jealousy, extreme greed that leads me to act in unskillful ways? Am I holding on and developing those kind of unskillful actions and thoughts, or am I abandoning them? Do I know the difference between good and evil? And do I act according to that knowledge? Do I give up evil and cultivate the good? Every day you can do that. That's probably the most practical side of the practice. But just to be aware that mind can create great suffering for itself when we fall into a lot of attachment, conceit, competition, jealousy, rage, selfishness. But when we start to abandon all that, we can develop great goodness in ourselves, and we can help other people. So keep these very simple, direct goals in mind. This will help you to keep on the right path of practice. Next question. Good afternoon, Luang Por. When I support my parents, I often feel quite challenged. Could I seek your guidance on this matter? Well, the Buddha constantly reminded us of the great benefit of giving help, support to parents in whatever way we can, material support and spiritual support, supporting them in their practice of Dhamma, or bringing them to the Dhamma if they don't have faith, helping to establish them in faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or if they have faith already, supporting them in their practice. This is how we can give something back to them. You might say this is almost independent of how they are as a person, their personality, their character. Because when we look at them on that sense, it's again coming back to Sakkaya Ditthi, isn't it? This person, my mum, my dad, I like them, I don't, I agree with them, I don't. When you come back to Sakkaya Ditthi and self-view, your own reactions to them and their behavior, it's coming back to the world of craving and attachment and suffering. If you bring your mind to the Dhamma, you say, well, my parents have helped me, brought me into the world, brought me up, probably done many things for you. Generally speaking, that's the case. What can I give back in appreciation for what they've done for me? Independent of whether you agree with them, like them, don't like them. So it's a great opportunity when you help your parents to practice compassion, practice tolerance, patience with their differing views, differing habits, behaviors, different personality. Practice humility when they criticize us, scold us, have a different opinion on something than us. This is already good practice, isn't it? And so your parents are your teachers as well. And then you learn from your reactions how easy it is to get annoyed with parents, and how easy it is to form opinions about parents. And so many people in the world have problems with their parents on one level or another. How do we deal with that? Well, we make it part of the practice, and you separate out your preferences and your biases in your mind from what is the true Dhamma, which is maybe to help them with compassion, to be comfortable and to be able to practice the Dhamma. How can we support that? Of course, if they practice the Dhamma, then if they do have wrong views, bad habits, their own character flaws, they may be able to address them through practicing Dhamma, by hearing the Dhamma, meeting with Dhamma teachers and fellow practitioners. This should have a good influence on them. So whatever it is that you may find challenging being with your parents and helping them, getting them to hear the Dhamma and practice the Dhamma is going to address that and help that. And also, if they're not that interested in Dhamma, which is quite common, well, you get on with your practice, you see what you can do to help them, but you get on with your practice because the more you gain from your practice, the more peace, the more understanding, the more stability of mind, all these good qualities that come from your practice will flow back to your parents, and they'll be happier the more happy you are. Even if you're not doing exactly what they want, because parents are often like that, and they have their idea what we should do, and we're not doing that, so then they're annoyed or they complain. But if we are in our hearts, we are reducing the causes for suffering by abandoning any amount, little or great, of greed, anger and delusion. That is going to help our parents for sure. We're going to behave as better human beings. We'll treat them better. We act with less greed, anger, delusion. That's good for everyone around us. It's good for us, good for them. So if they're not interested in Buddhism, Buddhist practice, well, still get on with your practice and just see what ways you can express compassion for them, look after them materially, spiritually. Next question. Hello, may I ask Luang Por a question, please? I hope you are keeping well. Recently I have been in a low place with one thing after another. So I reached out to a doctor for help and they have put me on antidepressants. I have two questions, if I may please. First, do antidepressants affect meditation? Second, I was standing having a mindful moment, trying to gather myself, and I saw a rotting skeleton standing where I was in my mind, as though I was looking through another person's eyes. I could identify this skeleton by my ring that I wear with the image of the Buddha. At this point I started to think of others, and they too were skeletons. Could this be a form of progression in my meditation, or could this be a fabrication of my mind? Well, first of all, if you're in a low place, we wish you well, you have our compassion. Probably is good to get a check-in with your GP, doctor, but that is the sort of common thing nowadays, is they will tend to give you some kind of antidepressant, sedatives, tranquilizers, things to help calm you down, sleep at night and so on, pills and chemicals. And that may help. So I wouldn't be saying either way it's good or bad. I would refer to your doctor and then observe what's going on the best you can. And sometimes we need, if we're in an extreme state of mind, depression, anxiety, well, the antidepressants may help. But like you say, you've probably already realized this, they do change the mind a bit, the way you think, what thoughts you have, how fast you think. So when you meditate, you might notice you're more groggy than before, or dull. So they can make it harder to deal with hindrances. But on the other hand, they may be helping you to calm down, so that's maybe a useful thing if you're in this more extreme state of depression, anxiety. So it's a balance. I think most people, if it's not too serious, then your goal may be to take antidepressants for a period of time until you feel better enough or well enough to get off them and wean yourself off them. But that's something you have to talk to your doctor about. With the meditation, you're obviously going to have to experiment a bit and see, well, what meditation can you do while you're taking these pills? Maybe try walking meditation. If sitting meditation you're too dull, too drowsy, because that could be a problem, you're just becoming drowsy sitting down, so try walking. Also, meditative activities, things that are not just sitting, but an action that maybe a simple task that's useful for you or somebody else, done in a meditative way, but it keeps you mindful. So, in a monastery they say when you're in a state of depression, anxiety, go and chop wood or sweep leaves. So things that are useful for yourself and others, tasks that can be of benefit, can also be a form of meditation, and maybe easier to focus on them than just sitting trying to watch your breath if you've taken a lot of antidepressants. But I would experiment and see what works for you in this situation. And it may be that you can't meditate very much, so maybe you do other things like chanting, reciting the Dhamma, reading the Dhamma, listening to Dhamma talks. Do more dana, helping people, going out, doing kind acts for family members, neighbours, strangers even, volunteering and so on. There may be these other avenues that you could explore while you're coming out of your depression. But it sounds like you have some basis in meditation from your second question, because this is something that does happen. People who meditate regularly, sometimes they have a moment where all the mind, good qualities of the mind come together, the peace, the insight, and they may have a vision, such as see themselves as a corpse or a skeleton, or see someone else as a skeleton, like you describe. So generally that's considered a moment of insight into the impermanence, the unattractiveness of this body, and the fact that it's destined to fall apart and die. It's not permanent, so then also maybe leads on to seeing the body as not self. But be careful how you interpret these things. Like you say, it could also be a mental fabrication, and especially if you're on medication, that's quite possible. So sometimes this happens, it can happen from a number of causes. You can take medication and that gives you more of the dream state. Your mind is not so lucid as before, you're not so mindful, you go into the dream state more, so it's quite possible even to have those kind of visions arise from medication. You have to try and observe what's going on. Where is this coming because the mind has become very peaceful, still, and having a bit of insight into the impermanent nature of the body? Or is it more just a kind of a dream state, a proliferation of mind? Could be either. Could be a kind of a form of, just a hallucinatory kind of vision. Both are possible. So just keep in mind that it's not sure. If you're not sure, well, just take it at face value. Oh, a vision of me as a skeleton. It arises, it passes away, it's only there for a while. So you don't take it too seriously or build it up into anything more than it is. It's just a vision that may give you some insight, may make you feel calm, because if it's coming from true insight, the result should be you feel calm. It helps you to see the true nature of phenomena, that this body is impermanent, it's not self. If it's not coming from insight, it's more from mental proliferation, it's a mental state, well, it could lead to irritation or aversion or more depression, couldn't it? You know, if you're seeing yourself or other people as a skeleton, you might feel, oh, life is really sad, depressing. So be careful, that could be the case as well. And so that's not really insight, that's more a negative state of mind associated with aversion, depression. And it can feed more depression. So with all these kind of unusual experiences in meditation, you have to be a little bit circumspect. Look at what was happening before you had that experience. Look at the experience itself, and then afterwards, what happens? How does it affect your mind? What feeling does it leave you with? Are you feeling peaceful? Does it sober you up from various attachments? Does it give you some kind of realization? Does it help you to let go of some attachment, say to sensuality, sensual desire perhaps? Or does it actually make you feel more irritated, more sad, more depressed with the world and your life? So mental proliferation will generally lead you to more states, unwholesome states, negative states of mind, more suffering, you could say. Whereas mindfulness and insight calm the mind down and lead to understanding, which is often accompanied by a sense of happiness, peace of mind. So you have to observe that in that experience, what's going on. That will also help you determine whether it is a good thing or maybe not such a good thing. Next question. Dear Luang Por, many thanks for your teachings. I wish you good health and happiness. If one practices well and understands that the 5 khandhas are impermanent and not self, does it mean that for an arahant his 5 khandhas no longer exist, or are they now under the control of his mind? Well, an arahant is a living human being, man or woman, who has practiced, cultivated this Noble Eightfold Path to its completion and developed true knowledge and vision of the way things are. So as we've been discussing, they understand all physical, mental formations are impermanent, are not self. And that releases the mind from all the delusions, the ignorance, the delusions that underlie the arising of craving and attachment. So the mind is not settling on anything that it sees as impermanent, as not self, because it knows there's no point. The mind has learned its lesson, that the things of this world are impermanent, they're not self, you can't own them, they don't belong to you. There is no such thing as a self, a permanent self. These things, whether it's mental, the mental experiences or the physical world, don't belong to you. So there's no point trying to grasp at them. So the mind tires of the whole process of grasping and attaching. It lets go. And so it's liberated, it relinquishes, lets go, puts things down. So what is it putting down? The mind is putting down these 5 khandhas based around the body, but feelings, memories, perceptions, thought formation, sense consciousness. They're still there, but the sense of self is not forming in them, around them, saying that these feelings are me, or I am in the feelings. The feelings still take place, meaning an enlightened one, an arahant, still feels pleasure and pain due to causes and conditions. So they're hungry, they feel the pain of hunger, they eat food, they feel the pleasure of eating good food maybe, and then filling up, so they've got energy again. They've been walking a long time, they feel tired, and the pain of tiredness, they sit down, they feel the relief of that pain That's the same for an arahant, but what's different is they don't create a self out of these experiences. The arahant can still think, but they don't attach or cling to thought as self. So the 5 khandhas are then just a kind of become a vehicle that the arahant is still using because they're living in the world, and the arahant has nothing more that they want from the world, but they are still able to be there for other people out of compassion. They can receive alms, give teachings, spread metta, and so on for the good of all beings. As long as they're alive, they can do that. So the khandhas are used for that purpose, but the mind is no longer clinging to the khandhas as self. There's no more wanting, clinging. There's no more becoming and birth. So the arahant is no longer born again. When they die, that's the end of the 5 khandhas. They break up, gone. And then the arahant is gone to all intents and purposes. But while they're alive, they still have khandhas, but there's no body in the khandhas or with the khandhas or taking ownership of the khandhas. You know, the arahant walks, but there's no one walking. The arahant sits, but there's no one sitting. The arahant talks, but there's no one talking. The sense of self is gone. So, what did Luang Por Chah say? He said it's like oil and water in a bottle. You have a bottle half full of water and you add some oil. They're both in the bottle, but they don't mix, because oil and water normally don't mix. So the oil floats, the water goes to the bottom, or the oil goes to the bottom, the water floats, I can't remember. But they're separate. They don't mix together. So they're in the bottle, meaning the arahant, as long as they are alive, they're still in the world, but their mind doesn't mix with the world. So they see, but seeing is just seeing. There's no sense of self arising, so there's no liking, disliking, wanting, not wanting. It's just seeing. Very pleasant sights are seen, but they're not grasped at, desired. Very unpleasant sights are seen, but there's no grasping, so there's no aversion. So there's just seeing, just hearing, just tasting, touching, smelling. And thought is just thought. So the arahant does have control of the mind in the sense, if they choose to think about something, they can. They can direct their mind to consider a problem, understand something, learn something. Or they can choose to dwell in stillness. There's no longer this sort of, I have to think about this, no longer the endless proliferation that the normal unenlightened mind experiences, because there's no more craving, no more ignorance, craving, attachment. So the mind is always still, but it doesn't mean to say they can't think. But when they think, they don't need to attach to the thought. It's just a tool, a function of mind that they can use. And when they finish, they put it down. And that's why the arahant doesn't have any suffering. They're not attaching anymore. So there's no more anxiety, worries, fears, no more desires. They're tired of desire and the objects of desire, because they know all the objects of desire are impermanent, so they don't look for them anymore, because they're impermanent. They can't satisfy you. What's impermanent can't satisfy you, so you don't need it. They know that. And that applies to every aspect of the 5 khandhas, the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the thoughts. Doesn't mean to say they don't know what is pleasant or unpleasant, but they don't grasp at it with a sense of self. Luang Por, my eldest sister, who also works in the same university with me, and she recently did something really nasty to her student. Then my students invited me for a thanks teacher's party, but I don't feel like going because I feel so ashamed about my sister. However, she didn't even think she is doing something that was not right. does my Hiriotapa need to be involved with my family's wrongdoing? Well, I understand you have your attachment to your sister, so if your sister does good, it can make you happy. If your sister does something not very good, it will make you sad. That's something to investigate, isn't it? You are not your sister. You're linked. There's a karmic link. You're born into the same family, same parents, but you're not the same person. So just as if you make a mistake, your sister is not responsible for that, normally speaking. If she makes a mistake, does something wrong, you're not responsible for that. That's her karma, and you make your karma, and she makes her karma. And that's one of the reflections we have to make every day, isn't it? You live with people, you're related to people, you help people, you are involved with other people, but they make their karma and you make your karma. And if they do something wrong, well, you can recognize that and feel sorry for them because they've made some bad karma that will come back to them in the form of suffering. And they may have hurt other people in some way as well, and you can feel compassion for them. And you may be in a position to help either party, to help your sister see her way where she's gone wrong, or you may not. Elder sister may not listen. Or you may be able to help somebody who she's hurt or affected, or you may not. It's out of your area or just beyond you to help them perhaps. We have to accept all this, so sometimes we have to develop upekkha, parami, equanimity, when people, even people close to us, create suffering or experiencing the results of their suffering in some way. There's not much we can do perhaps, so we have to just be very patient, calm, understand this is karma. You wish them well, but you may not be able to actually affect this situation at all. But like you were saying, should you go to this teacher's thank you party? Well, understand if you don't want to go there because it reminds you of what you've seen, what you've heard, and it's painful, I understand that. But another way of looking at it is you could still go and practice metta, karuna, kindness, compassion for everyone, including your sister, including the students, including everyone, because you're not the one who made the mistake or did the bad thing. And when you're going, you're not going to condone your sister's behavior. If she's behaved badly, you're not going there to condone it or support her in her bad behavior, but you're going there as a teacher, an individual in that situation, and you wish everybody well. And sometimes we have to do that. We have to mix with people we know they've done something evil, wrong, bad. Well, you can't always run away. And sometimes you may stay away. I'm not saying that's never the case, but sometimes you actually still go there with that person because they also need the wholesome inputs. Maybe you can help them in a very subtle, indirect way by being there. Maybe you can help the students. You can be a refuge or help a friend to them. So it's understandable if you feel sad, but maybe you also see if you can just carry on as normal and look for opportunities to help your sister understand better how to change or help people who have been affected by her. And your understanding of wrongdoing, hiriotapa, your sense of shame, understanding of the consequences of wrongdoing, doesn't change, does it? You understand what is right and wrong, so you practice accordingly. If someone else doesn't understand what is right and wrong, well, maybe you being present can help them be a reflection for them. It may help them subtly if you're around, because it's your sister. And you have to be very patient with them, but you keep up your own good practice, understanding what is right and wrong. That's going to help the people around you, whether it's family or other people. So sometimes we have to be brave, we have to be patient with those situations. Last question. Luang Por, how can we have mindfulness to deal with all the multiple kinds of sense contact, phassa, that we experience every day, and to always maintain right view so that we don't harm others through our actions and speech. This is the purpose of Noble Eightfold Path, for this very reason. Yes, we're all subject to lapses of mindfulness, lapses of understanding. As you see, when you meditate, hindrances come into the mind all the time. Sensual desire, ill will, dullness, sloth and torpor, laziness, restlessness, agitation, anxiety, or skeptical doubt. These are the 5 hindrances. And when you're at work, you're traveling, you're shopping, or meditating, these hindrances are popping into your mind all the time. So that is why we cultivate the factors of the path. We listen to the Dhamma, reflect on the Dhamma regularly to develop right view. So then as conditions prompt or trigger these hindrances, these more negative mental states and reactions to things coming up, we can treat them with right view. That's our aim. So you have to keep developing the inputs of listening to the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma, and then training, have an attitude, I'm one in training, I'm learning, I'm training, so we take on precepts. That's the first thing we learn, isn't it? How to use precepts to restrain the worst excesses of our greed, our anger, our delusion. And keeping precepts makes us mindful. And when you break a precept, you realize I must have been unmindful, I was careless, and I said that thing or did that thing. So sometimes you reflect back, just like monks, every 2 weeks we review our practice of the Vinaya, the training, the discipline, and then we confess or we reveal whatever offense we've broken that we've become mindful of, and then we undertake to no longer break that rule but to keep it. And you're educating yourself, you're learning how to be more mindful, understanding what is skillful behavior leading to happiness, purification of the mind, and what is unskillful behavior leading to more suffering, more craving, more attachment. You're understanding the difference, and then you're determining to act accordingly. So that's why you keep precepts, whether it's 5 precepts or the Vinaya, the discipline of a Buddhist monk. And you have to keep reviewing until it becomes part of you, until it's normal for you to keep the 5 precepts. Until that point, you keep plugging up the holes where you get it wrong or you have lapses. So that takes effort, mindfulness, wise reflection, right view, as you say. But you just keep practicing, improving. That's what practice is. That's why we call it practice or training, really. It's a form of training. And it doesn't matter if other people don't know what you're doing, that doesn't matter. You know what you're doing, so you're training with your precepts, you use meditation as well, use the Dhamma you've heard, you reflect on that. So we say until you're thinking Dhamma. Most of the time we're not thinking Dhamma, we're thinking in a very worldly way. I like this, I don't like that, I want this, I don't want that. That's the way of the world, and if you're following your moods, as Ajahn Kalyano used to say, if you're still following your moods, you're not yet practicing Dhamma. Because moods are not going to help you see the Dhamma, find peace, find happiness. Moods only create more suffering. Moods are coming from a lack of wisdom, they're not coming from mindfulness and wisdom. So you have to get to that point where you're training to go beyond your moods and act in Dhamma, rather than just following your preferences, your moods, your emotions. But it's a gradual process, it takes time, so you also need a lot of patience, keep coming back to it, and when you do make a mistake, you learn how to pick yourself up. We've all done that, and we probably still have to do it many times before we reach the end of the path. So those are the questions tonight. I hope the answers were helpful, and apologies for any technical difficulties. Technology is suffering. Technology is impermanent.